Hi, I'm Melissa, and I'm the Curator of Museum Education here at PAM. Welcome to the Fredi, Schiff, Levin Lecture Series, which is graciously sponsored by the Levin family. Now, in its 22nd season, the lecture series honors Fredi Schiff Levin's legacy as a member of the Provincetown arts community by inviting artists, curators, authors, and scholars to speak at PAM. We are grateful to the Levin family for the continued support of this annual program. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we welcome Anthony Fisher. Anthony received his MFA from Yale and his BFA from Carnegie Mellon University. He exhibits nationally at the Gallery Merlot in New York City. His latest solo exhibit in New York was in 2018, his fifth since 2003. He has received reviews of his work in Art News, Art Critical, and Painting Perceptions. His work is included in private and public collections. Anthony lives and paints just outside of Boston in a community of other artists, and what was once an elementary school. He has been a university teacher for 27 years. Welcome, Anthony Fisher.
Oh my God, it's 33 now.
33! I pulled that from your website, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, just let me know when you want to dim the lights. And
this is the perfect time to tell my wife I'm going to retire right now. Sure. Yes, I guess this is great. Well, I would first like to thank my very dear friend Rob Dutois. It had a lot to do with how things look in that gallery. And of course, Chris McCarthy and Madeline Larson, and Jim Zimmerman and Melissa Moses, and many thanks to the Levin family. I did thank Chris McCarthy, right? You're back there, right? Great. And especially and particularly my very, very good friend Don Beal, who made this possible for me. And dudes, I am just really happy about this. I mean, walking around in there, it's just a pleasure. It's kind of rare for me to say that, actually, but I honestly feel that some of the recent work is among the best I've ever done. So it's just a privilege to have it up. I'm honored. And I think, well, there we go. Okay, I have some shots of the studio. I mean, my students always enjoy context. I have all kinds of PowerPoints of famous artist studios. This isn't a famous artist studio, but maybe. But anyway, I think it's always helpful. And I think one of the reasons I'm so grateful about the opportunity with this show is I can finally, get back and see a tree from the forest. I can finally kind of get back and see the work. And it just seems while I work and make things, I make something and then I unmake it over and over again. And I try to be objective and really see it, but it's so much visual noise in the studio. It's really hard to perceive sometimes what I'm constructing. But there's a couple in progress there that are actually in the show right now. But for some reason, my work, it doesn't really, it's kind of ends up boring if my studio isn't a total chaotic mess. I don't know why. In fact, I've had friends occasionally visit the studio, and if I've cleaned it up, they suddenly look worried and say, "What's wrong? This isn't good," So anyway, I'll show you a few more just of shots of stuff in progress. I work on things simultaneously, many different things. That's just a close-up of the palette. I buy the really huge tubes, and then I cut off the crimped end of it, and then squeeze the whole thing at once out. There's even, if you can see that sandwich lurking back there, can you see it? It's actually plastic, but it used to be the kids' toys, and I still have it as something to help with scale. Yes, and this is Linda. This is an honor. Wait, I'll go back. I didn't even know I had a photograph of this. This is probably the only commission I've ever done in my life, and I was surprised. I don't even have an image of it except for this when I took a picture of it in your house. So for whatever reason, I put it in here. I don't know. But anyway, up until about 10 or 12 years ago, I did series of raw meat and flayed lambs and visceral expressive portraits. I was trying to evoke the interior states of feeling, and those were my themes. This, of course, is a soutine of a flayed ox. I'm just showing you some of my sources. This is Agnus Dei. Pal, is a quiz. Who did this painting? Okay, good for you. And so I followed this beautiful, this actually, hon, if you notice, this is in the fabulous gemstones. This is on their mantle in their house, this painting, copy of it. And so that's my own homage. This is actually this painting is called Agnus Dei. It's a big, very thick painting. So I was trying to anyway, evoke psychic states of being into these marks and paint and charcoal. I just wanted to elicit different kinds of sensations about our interior life. The lamb, certainly, we have it in our house. And Laura, my wife, is always thrilled when I have subject matter like this because of the prospects of profit that, that they're going to sell really well. In fact, when I had this flayed lamb delivered to the house one morning, I thought she'd be gone for work, and she wasn't. And it was covered in cheesecloth swaths like a mummy, and you just looked at it and nodded your head and walked back out the door. So my poor children, too, would come home, and sometimes I play dates with other kids, like in middle school and stuff, and I'd be in there, and I'd be like painting all these scary things. My son Luke said my studio was always Halloween, 365 days a year. Of course, this is a wonderful painting by Rembrandt, and this is a painting of mine of actually this was the head of the lamb that I had painted, and it's on a big Bible, so that's another one of these paintings. So anyway, these are some examples of work that's meant a lot to me. Of course, Giacometti and Frank Auerbach. But of course, Picasso. This is Picasso's very last self-portrait. And he did it with just crayons, children's crayons, a little drawing. I think it's in some, I think there's a bank in Japan that owns this. God, I would love to have it. It's so amazing to me. Doesn't it look, I mean, seriously, I didn't read this either. I'm just looking at it right now, and it's like his head is a boulder, and it's about to roll off that weird, the shoulders, it's like a precipice, I don't know. It looks like it's gonna rock out of there, so these are my drawings. This is a good friend of mine who was a Trappist monk, and I did do a life cast of his head because he was capable of going into meditative states, but I drew him. He looks like the guy in Fallout with that nose. I just wanted to show you drawings. Don really wanted me to have drawings for the show, and I couldn't come up with some of the ones I had hoped. These are neighbors. That's another painting of a head. This was a beloved model who has since passed away. This literally kind of looks like he's passed away, but I worked with some colleagues in the sculpture department, and I kind of commissioned this life cast so that I could work from it. And it was like it took 5 hours. You had to be completely still for 5 hours, covered with mold-making materials and plaster and everything else. But it's a really cool, beautiful thing. So anyway, and that is a drawing from that cast. I've always loved painting. I can't think of anything I would really rather do. But I am so often profoundly disappointed in my work. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. And I'm usually my own worst enemy. And I can't help but scorn my abilities all the time. And this predilection of mine combined with, I think when I went to art school, my formative years in art school, late 70s, early 80s, I think that did something to me. I think it cemented into or inculcated into my mind the myth of the suffering artist. There was like a return of heroic painting for about a decade with the neo-expressionism and stuff. And I think there was just this sense that the romantic heroism, and you had to pay your dues all the time. And I don't know, Don and I sometimes talk, and Rob, about, you get out of grad school and they're like, no, you can't show your work. You have to like paint for 10 years. You got to get better. You can't I mean, now it's completely different. But anyway, I think it really just gave me this idea about suffering and art. And of course, the writers I was attracted to were all kind of suffering people. My pantheon of favorite artists at the time were filled with many writers and painters who endured a lot of pain and tragedy. And I think I was, and you know, I was accustomed to this mental angst, but you know, for the first time in my life around 2012, I became acquainted with serious physical pain. And slowly but surely, I don't know, just trying to walk or even take a step became more and more painful. And of course, being me, I knew this would inject more authenticity into my work. Yes. And I had to, you know, I wanted to put all these really important, precious feelings and suffering into the paint, right? So anyway, I had both left and right ankles totally fused. And, you know, they're horrible. And my poor, long-suffering wife, who's very resilient and also my patron and beautiful, she knows all about it, all my complaining about it all the time. And it just takes at least a year to recover from each surgery, and you really can't do much. You can't walk or do anything. It's horrible. And I guess this was the cast. And then she bought me this little toy, and this was kind of, I had this toy moments before we took off the cast and could see. Yeah, I gotta do it one more time. Yeah, so there we go. So I'm sorry if this offends anyone. But so that's the right ankle, and that's the left ankle. Really fun stuff. So anyway, during this period, I guess this was actually probably 2014. So I was confined to that's the studio floor, which is going to end up being extremely important. I was confined to this old steel office chair, and I was stewing for months, frustrated, trying to draw from that life cast. And I'd sit in this chair and start, you know, I always go into the studio early in the morning, and I can be in there all day, but it was the summertime. But my habit was to sit in the chair. I had the cast, I was trying to do these drawings, and I would start with really nice sheets of paper, but I would just, you know, make a failure and discard it and just throw it on the floor under my feet. And eventually, of course, the studio floor was completely littered everywhere with dozens of these torn, ravaged drawings. They kept piling up over and over again. So anyway, there's the chair, and there's the floor, and my God, I suddenly began to notice. You'd think I would have noticed earlier, but all my movements going back and forth and spinning around, pirouetting in the chair, I got better and better at it, but you know, I couldn't stand up and do anything. I didn't realize that they were all recorded and emphasized on all these rejected drawings by the chair's wheels. So the rubber wheels were acting like printmaking bears. They were just picking up the charcoal and paint filth from the floor, and via my weight in the chair, were transferring this information to the paper. So, what was so compelling, why the tangles of lines are great, is that, of course, I wasn't trying to make art. I tell that to my students, too. The worst thing you can do to make something beautiful is to try to do it. Like, to try to make art is always horrible. So, when I'm not trying to conduct these very thoughtful aesthetic judgments, I might have a chance at doing something good. The unpremeditated rhythms and actions of these wheels, the pathways look like sensuous ribbons of black and gray, undulating and overlapping in fascinating and unexpected ways. That's what I loved about them. Anyway, so this solemn, painstaking scrutiny of my life cast and all the endless, exhaustive editing. I mean, I would take power sanders and sand my drawings down. I'd start with really thick paper. Resulted in drawings that truly sucked. They were really terrible. But the only thing that didn't suck was my unaware recordings of the motions of the chair. So it was like the sun coming out, and I had my aha moment, and I slowly and surely started to embrace a new process with fresh criteria, and I began to create these simple, novel tools. So like I have all these examples on different kinds of pieces of plywood of different types of wheels. So I would buy things that were, obviously, they were usually meant for something completely different, like pulleys and things, but I would put these onto contraptions. And I adapted everything so that I could work from the floor. And what was wonderful too, there's a good example of the various tools and making stuff on the floor. The really wonderful blessing also was that my ego really ridiculed what I was doing. It said it was just arbitrary and mindless, and it decided to tune out. And I think it takes a lot of life to discover as your ego quiets down, you become more of who you really are. I know that sounds like a cliche thing to say, but it's true. And I've never been happy in my studio unless the ego could kind of get little tiny, small. So that was cool too. That was one of the reasons, this is like an antidote to a lot of the problems I was having, was to make work like this. So I'll just show you some, like that. Laura loves this period of my work too, because the house eventually started to become like a subway station, and there's just like this film of charcoal everywhere. You just go like this and you just see it on your fingers, and she was freaking out. It was pretty bad actually. I would have friends at work that say, well, yeah, but charcoal can't hurt you. I mean, you just draw it. I go, no. I'm buying big containers and dumping all of it. It would be like having 1,000 pieces of charcoal all at once. So like that square back there, that trapezoid, was sort of my charcoal pit. And I'd put paper on it, and then I would roll my machines around it, make stuff like this. So the weight, basically it was like primitive printmaking. It was all fun, cool stuff. These are some of the machines. I call them machines. Yeah. In fact, we should have wheeled the one out. And, there's one in the room in there, like that. This, my neighbor and now good friend, Abelardo Morel, who's a wonderful and famous photographer, did these pictures. There he is, right there with his crazy camera. It's like, God, it does 2 million pixels, Alexander, or something like that. I don't know, it's crazy. But anyway, and we had a show. It was really fun. That's some of the work. He's a photographer who's completely attracted to painting. All he talks about is painting. He's got all the books in his house are about painting, but he's a photographer. I'm always very jealous of what he can get. He can look at little things like this big and, they look giant, but I bring him over and I mock him. You can't make a surface like this because it's so crazy. The photos are all smooth. Anyway, so these are some of the machines. This is something at the Fog. Libby, you remember seeing this with us, right? This machine is right in the entryway to the Fog Museum in Cambridge. So I love discovering things like this. So I would make homemade giant ballpoint pens out of these ball bearings and things. I found these on a catalog where people would order them for those ramps in like airports where your luggage goes, So I don't know, all these different ways to make tools. It was really fun. This was, when I was a child, this was our dining room table, but I took the top off of it and turned it into this crazy machine. That is my friendly magnet. It's like having a coral snake living in your studio because it's scary. It's so powerful that it exerts 1,000 pounds of force. So if it got on top of your hand, between your hand and metal, it would just completely crush it. So I have to be very careful. Like, that's a tangerine or something next to it. Look how huge it is. It's like a hockey puck. It's huge. My son is really smart. Like, he's a scientist. I said, Adam, I don't know, what am I going to do? He told me how to order it and everything. In fact, I think now with the rare earth minerals and stuff like China, I don't know if you can get this. He told me, Dad, you probably can't even get this right now. I said, well, what do I do with it? And he goes, well, just throw it in the steel dumpster. It'll never come out of there. It'll stick right to it. So, I mean, that's true. Yeah, it would just stay there. And these are big drawings. These are some of the drawings I did with the magnet, some of these things. Then, of course, I ordered the big sonotube. And Laura, you weren't home, and I had to take all the doors off of the hinges in the house to get it in.
I missed that.
And then I built like this weird bed to go inside of it. But anyway, and that's just, a little glimpse of some of my material. I mean, it's really horrible. In fact, for environmentalists, I'd be kind of ashamed because I use so much crap. It's just terrible. But anyway, this is oil paint and acrylic paint and everything else that I was using. This is the black and white stuff. That's me with I think I had the walking boots on. I look like an astronaut. I've got the little garbage bags or the Shaw's Star Market bags tied to my feet so I wouldn't ruin them. And so these are various examples of things that were happening on this big tube. I just started inventing cool ways to make things. I mean, I could stand in just one spot and just turn it, and I could make if I wanted to, I could make like a 8 by 12 foot painting and not even have to climb a ladder or move around. It was kind of cool. So, let's see. So yeah, these are just more and more examples. I can't help it, I threw a lot of stuff in here. And I apologize. This is the little video out there, and I thought if some of you haven't seen it, I just put it in here. It's only 2 minutes, but I think it's very instructive. You could tell he was a little younger. Yes. This is all shot with an iPhone, too, like nothing fancy. In fact, we taped it to my foot at one point, the iPhone. Put it on there. These are just like grasses that you see outside, the dune grasses and things. My magnets. It's very fun. I built this chassis for it with the wheels. I need a bigger studio. It's just like, I don't know what to do. It has to get bigger. Anyway. So, thank you for watching that again. Anyway, I think I just started changing so many things and so much of my criteria to make things, and I was happier with that. I never started anything anymore with truly deliberate ideas or narratives or anything like that. Not about politics. I mean, obviously, I'm channeling my life and I'm being subjected to all the craziness all the time, like everyone else in here with the world. So things are clearly being cast over all of our unique prisms are taking all this stuff in and doing things with it. But sometimes I'm just inspired by particular work in history or natural forms as a jumping off point. I try to constantly craft sort of snares, traps to encourage beautiful accidents and things. And if I keep inviting all these chances and accidents, and I'm really lucky, the first glimmers of little visual dramas in the painting start to multiply on the painting. It's just cool. It's like it suddenly starts to hum or something. And I think this gets to something I've talked about a bunch of times. And it's a good analogy, I think, because I think that things like books and paintings, tangible things, I think can be seen as sophisticated machines, because I think they're able to transport us to fantastic places if they're really good. And a machine that hasn't been put together is only a pile of parts, right? I mean, stripped of any other grammatical relationships, they're just inert things. The words that comprise gorgeous sentences and marks that are in sublime passages in a painting are just inert, silent things, right? They're just parts until they're put together in perfect combinations. And I feel sometimes once I've coaxed with all these different machines and things, a surface to team with like tons of marks and shapes like schools of fish or something, it's almost like I have dumped a cluttered box of machine parts and wires and screws and sprockets and batteries and everything else all over the place. And I think after weeks and probably months, if I keep soldering these little wires in many, many different combinations, sometimes these tiny little sparks start to flare in little places. And then it's like you just have to cajole these little fragile embers into a flame. And if I'm really fortunate and I keep editing and doing stuff, you might begin to hear a heartbeat in the painting. It just sometimes happens. It's marvelous. This is Pat Steer. These are all kinds. I mean, I don't have any of this stuff anymore. I mean, I take pictures of it with my phone and then I go on to bury it with something else. So it's kind of cool to see some of these things again. So I do believe that painting and writing are extremely close relatives. And I remember maybe 12 years ago reading an essay in the New York Times by the Fine Art Works Center alumni, Jhumpa Lahiri. I wish I had met her when she was here. I met wonderful people there at the Fine Arts Works Center. But let me just read a quote, because it's meant a lot to me. She wrote, "Surely it is a magical thing for a handful of words, artfully arranged, to stop time, to conjure a place, a person, a situation in all its specificity and dimensions. But only certain sentences breathe and shift about like live matter in soil." And I just love that. Maybe it reminds me when I was a child, we had these boxes of, when I went to Canada, boxes of sawdust full of earthworms, and then we'd open it up and they'd be all moving around in there. I just thought that was so cool. Yeah. So anyway, I love that quote. So I don't know where I am now, but anyway. I'll keep showing slides. I have so many of them. So I think, honestly, here, this is how one of the paintings in there was created. I'll show you. Here, that's a hot water bottle. Yeah. So that was one of the ways I was making stuff too, to make different arcs. Like there you go. There's a good example of all that stuff happening on the floor, which was very fun. Anyway, I think the most important thing to me, what I really long for, is my paintings to breathe and shift about just like that. Seriously. I think she's dead on about the the wonderful lure of being transported by a beautiful sentence. And I love reading, and when I'm struck by a sublime combination of words, I just have to keep rereading it for pleasure. It's just marvelous. And there's so many mesmerizing places in great paintings where there are perfect grammatical relationships of colors and shapes, and they just fill you with awe. They make you so happy. It's wonderful. That's the painting that's out there right now. That's a drawing by Leonardo this was on my son's physics book, the cover, like it was about hydraulics or something, but anyway. And this is another one of Leonardo's drawings of the deluge, plants. A friend of mine, Spencer Ladd, took this photo of these writhing vines. So I find all these wonderful natural forms that inspire me a lot too. So I think my world of lines and shapes exists next to another parallel world of words, and then there's another parallel world of musical notes. So if you try and test over and over again and place these different things in exacting grammatical relationships, the writing or the music or the painting can actually emerge with a soul. I really think that's true. These are drawings that are kind of based on my inspiration from Leonardo. So this is like a sable brush with some red oxide paint or something like that. I think this was unassisted by the machines. I think I was disobeying my edict. These are more drawings. Large, big drawings. And I don't know where so many of these are, but yeah. They look okay on the screen? Yeah, I guess so. I haven't even looked over there. Yeah. This was a machine-made drawing right here. So something that's really important to me that I want to talk about. So in addition to trying to make grammatical structures for shapes and colors and all that stuff, I really want to imbue my work with the pent-up energy and instincts that spring from my body. I feel that as you work, constant repetitive actions in the arms and wrists and hands, squeezing, sculpting, troweling, scraping, whatever, create all these enduring muscle memories. And I think I've come to feel these are more critical to my own process than the work of my eyes and my intellect, honestly. I think there's perhaps more image-making intelligence in my hands than in my head. These are more, that's a stencil drawing. These are some of the drawings, like just for you to get a sense of the scale. Memory, you can tell this is from the gallery. Gives you a sense of how big some of these drawings are. But I'm bringing, a wonderful thing about teaching is it's such a reciprocal thing where, I could never teach if I wasn't like doing this all the time. It just makes me feel real and honest, and I bring the hardships of the studio to bear in teaching my students. And then so many of them do such cool stuff that, I'm like a vampire, just sucking off the energy. It's marvelous. They do such cool stuff. But, so I've been introducing new methods and ideas about this muscle memory stuff. And now it's just critical for me. I've taught figure drawing, for instance, for 33 years. And I just make a really big deal now about the posture and the distance from their body to the easel and the way they hold the pencil or the chalk or all kinds of things. In fact, I've taken excerpts. How many of you remember seeing the movie The Karate Kid years ago? I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. Mr. Miyagi, remember Paint the Fence? Or, it was sand the floor, wax on, wax off. Anyway, this hapless young man was really beaten up horribly, and he wanted to learn karate, so he went to this Japanese master of kung fu or karate or something, and petitioned him to help him learn. And all he did was constantly give him a big brush and say, just go out and paint the fence. And so he just did this for days and weeks, and he got really pissed off. But the thing was, it's a great scene in the movie, and I show my students this movie, or the excerpts from the movie. that when the teacher starts to throw punches and kicks at him, suddenly he just reacts because of his muscle memory. And it's just marvelous. And the students are always like, wow, you know. So that's a picture of birds, you know. I guess that's called, what is it called? It's called memoration, yeah. Murmuration, yes. So these are more paintings and drawings inspired by different things. A friend took this photograph and sent it to me. I love this, yeah. Foreshortened planes are such a big deal. So that's my studio floor again. I take pictures of water, you know, like this. Slow it down into slow motion just to look at it, and then try to respond, you know, with different things. These are bath towel or beach towels reflected in a swimming pool. I don't know. I just, you know, love to take pictures of all these things. This was actually, honey, this was in Princeton. This was near Adams Place, and I was taking pictures of water. These images are actually, I believe some of these are early versions of some of the paintings that are out there right now. There's so much stuff on those paintings. I mean, this stuff is underneath one of those paintings right now. And I was trying to sort of, there were some things going on, and it was sort of a memorial painting for a person, and I was doing these sort of wreaths, and I thought they were cool, but somehow they didn't stick, and I got rid of them all, or scraped them all off. I don't know, but I'm looking at, so that's like one of the paintings, that's, I'm sure, out there too, in the gallery. It's one of my paintings that I've scraped down. These are fabrics that I've thrown into water to take pictures of, just to get an idea of cool lines and stuff. This reminds me of the lines I was doing in the studio with the machines. This is a painting maybe 2 years old. That's an earlier version of, I think, the one that's out there. And that's an earlier version of the one that's out there right now. That one's, yeah, these are other new thick paintings. Of course, I love to take pictures of this. Like, to me, that's just like a gorgeous natural drawing. It's just wonderful. It's like a giant brush doing this cool thing. You know, I think, I'm talking about my body and muscle memory and all that stuff, but I don't want to neglect the fact I do have a brain, and it's, I think, best served in my editing stages when I'm painting. So, and that's partly why my work is always so encumbered with scar tissue, and from all the relentless scraping and digging and tearing stuff off. These are, of course, this inspires a lot of my line drawings. That's an early version of something on cardboard. Look at that. I mean, that's just so freaking cool. The work out there, the last couple of years, it's the first time I've ever painted on cardboard. I just thought, I love rigid supports because I beat the things up so badly, and I walk on them and do all this shit. Like, I mean, it's hard to do that on a canvas, you know. Panels are better for that. But then the real panels are too freaking heavy, and I put so much paint on them, it's ridiculous. So anyway, I think what I really wanted to do was to create bulletin boards, honestly. Like I bought these giant sheets of cardboard from Uline or something, like 4x8 sheets that were for like big giant drums of oil or whatever. But anyway, I would laminate, I would glue them together to make really thick supports. That's what those are out there. And it just made it really easy for me to just tack things and pin things and staple things. And it just allowed me to rearrange visual ideas like very quickly. It was marvelous. And it's so just non-precious. And I could just tear stuff off and dig into it. Robert, this is right next to you. This is the oyster bed. That's like a Anselm Kiefer kind of painting. But this just mesmerizing texture. It's wonderful. And so these are other examples. Oh, this is my family from the other, not long ago, right? This was at the opening. I'm so proud. Look how tiny I am right there in the middle. Anyway, I've been talking a lot. I'd love to take some questions if you have some. That'd be marvelous. Thank you very much. This is such a privilege.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Anthony, you're making, like with these paintings out here, you're making, like, quote unquote, more. You're making more like aesthetic decisions, right? Like placing pieces of cardboard around and.
Very good point, yes.
Versus.
Yes. I couldn't stay away from it too long, yeah. Yes. And I think that I needed more sort of deliberate, willful space. Like, space is always the most important thing to me in my work. And when I teach, it's always about space. But, I was aiming for more rhythmic, moving space in the paintings. I wasn't quite getting it other ways, but yeah.
So, the reference material is new to me.
The reference?
And I thought I knew your work so well.
Huh? You mean like the pictures?
The fabric thrown in the pool.
Oh, God, I've got billions of those pictures.
Yeah, or the flats, or, that's all new. So that directly influenced, or was it a touchstone or a springboard?
Absolutely.
Into the things you're chasing down.
Yeah. And I mean,
You're a good photographer, too.
well, the phone, it's just the freaking phone. In fact,
there's an eyeball attached
but
to the phone.
I mean, I'm kind of listless and kind of lazy about that. I would never do this if I had to have a camera and like set those damn things.
Oh, no, who would?
So the phone, I think I have.
It's a photographer.
I had to update my cloud storage. I have like 29,000 images in my cloud. I do, literally, yeah. That many unread emails too, by the way. I mean,
Do you ever do anything in a small way?
No. I'm excessive about things. It's true. Yeah.
Wow.
You talk about the lure of being transported,
Yes.
which is wonderful. And that is the experience that one has in looking at your work. It is transporting.
That touches me deeply.
But there's more, and that is the idea. The video is called Inside Line, and there's so much of the body, and you talk about the body as well, in which you are physically inside the line. The line is not external to you.
That's
All those images in which you are embedded on a mattress, or where you have this flourishing of the body in relation to the line, and they're absolutely not separate. So can you talk about that? You already have, but it's really profound in a way that some of those images are touched, the ones with the central images and the ones that are colored. But the other ones are really about your body, almost more than your mind. The body is operating.
Yeah.
Inside the Line, a great title for the video.
I do think it's pretty obvious too. You could look at certain musicians who are performing at such speeds that literally the brain can't send signals that fast to the hands. Like the hands are doing things independently of the brain. I mean, it might be partly all the rehearsals and all the practice and muscle memory, but there are things that make them autonomous besides the head. Like they're just doing cool stuff. There's a wonderful, famous lithograph by Katie Kolowitz where she's holding a Connie crayon or a litho crayon in her hand, and it's like this, it's a beautiful, very wonderful, it's like a closely understood head, like it's a really articulate head. But then there's just like this zigzag line to the hand and then the thing, and it's just like, it's like energy going from, I think it's more like energy going from the hand up to the head than the other way around, but it's cool. I mean, there's more to your question. I love what you just said about being in the midst of the line, or having the line flow in the center or from the person. I'm sure some people would talk about this, and they would obviously bring up like action painting, right? I mean, from the 40s and 50s and everything, the abstract expressionists. And I guess it's kind of like that too, wrestling matches and stuff with the work. But I guess I just feel the body kind of liberated me from that precious, kind of elegant, kind of cultivated, exquisite kind of mark that I've learned to make. And I still love to do that, and I love to show it off to students, like, you know. But it's kind of nice not to do it. It's wonderful to have something else, like a different way, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think drawing is just the greatest thing you can do with your time. Yeah. Thank you for saying it that way. I'm going to remember that. If I get to do another talk, I'm putting that in there.
Anybody else? All right.
So you were talking a lot about this idea of the physical pain having done something to your perception of what you were doing. And it's making me think about the film of you, the Free from Preconceptions. Liberated from Preconceptions. I just wondered if you would, you sort of alluded to it, that you feel differently about yourself or in your work. But I wonder if you could say more specifically about how you feel about yourself and how your attitude towards your work.
Yeah, Barry. I feel mostly strangely kind of happy now in my studio. And of course, Laura and I have been together for 38 years. I mean, so you've been through a lot with me. The suffering thing can go to hell. I'm just sick of that kind of stuff. Of that, you know. I mean, we all suffer. Life is very hard. But I think it's so much fun to make stuff. It just is. And, you know, I mean, if you pinned me to a wall and said, who's your favorite artist? I'd say, well, that's an impossible question. It's ridiculous. But if I had to say, of course, I would say Picasso. And Picasso had all kinds of, he had all kinds of crazy shit happening in his life, like everyone. But he had so much fun, too. He did such cool stuff. In fact, memory, I love these mesmerizing things of him drawing with a flashlight, which is very much like what you're talking about, where the lines were all around his body. He did this gorgeous figure drawing of, you know, they would do a stop, I don't know, the kind of camera that can capture that. Yeah. So, anyway. I have to come and enjoy this, right? I mean, I have to come and spend some time in there and just relax in the afternoon when the light's beautiful. And it's such an honor to be here with Charles Hawthorne. I think these are so beautiful paintings, man. They're so good. Yeah. I wouldn't have realized that when I was much younger, I don't think, anyway. I'm sorry, I don't want to keep going, but I wish my parents could have been here. It's so cool, because they brought me here when I was a little kid, and I saw things here that inspired me. And they'd be really proud for me to be in this, you know, in that space. It's marvelous. I remember walking around in the Hawthorne Gallery when I was little. Yeah. Yes, Linda.
Just speaking of when you were a little kid, I have a really vivid memory back in the 60s of being in your kitchen in Pittsburgh. And on the kitchen wall was a little poster that your mom, I guess, had framed.
Don Quixote.
Yeah, it was there your whole life.
Yeah, Don Quixote, yeah.
Not that one.
Oh.
The one
the Scarecrow of Oz. Yeah.
It was a little scarecrow, and it said, "Come to the book fair."
Yeah. And I won first prize.
And he got first prize.
Grade.
He was probably the only kid who did his own work.
That's the only reason. Yeah.
That was probably kindergarten, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got a free paperback book at that book fair, and I can still remember. It was called Bolts, a Robot Dog. I still remember. I was so happy.
Well, what I'm thinking about now, since I've been following you since you were 5,
or earlier even.
And you, I'm always grateful to you that you did that painting that you showed in the beginning. I know you didn't want to do it. It wasn't really, you did it for me.
I
And you-
did. I'm so happy I put it in there. I didn't even know at the time that you'd be here, but
And well, anyway, it was just something that you knew what I wanted, and it really wasn't who you were, but you did it for me. And
well, I did make it my way, and you were wonderfully appreciative. It's really bristling. It's very, it's very, encumbered.
anyway, so I have been able to touch every stage in some way or another over all the years, and now I'm wondering, do you have any ideas about what might happen next?
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, I already have a bunch of things. Well, I'll just bring out all my menagerie of rejects and start to figure out what to do, because I always have all these backups because I'm so restless. I'm always doing something, and yeah, I have a lot of scarred, weird things hiding. Don pulled out the black and white painting on that far wall. It's called Thicket. I was prepared to cut that in half or remove the lower 3 feet of it. And I mean, really, I just was like, and he was like, don't touch the painting, just leave it alone. And now that I see it out there, it's cool. Like, I don't know why, I have a compulsion to do that, to just fuck with everything really bad. Yeah. Thank you again. It's wonderful.